I'm very pleased to have Dan Dodge with us for the whole 3-week period. He is an artist and adventurer in residence, so he is working in Sarah Mabey's class on climate change, helping students do a photographic essay, and I think some of you are from that class. And he's also very generously delivering some workshops and some presentations, all of which will have an interactive component to them. In my opinion, Dan really embodies tech and trek like probably no other. He has literally trekked over 5,000 miles in the last couple of years, having through hiked the Appalachian Trail and the Pacific Crest Trail. He's planning and preparing and training, I suspect, for the Continental Divide in the coming year. I met Dan literally when our single path converged, and he blew by me with his backpack and kilt on the Pacific Crest Trail in the Sierra Mountains of California. It's been a great pleasure getting to see him. I only knew him for that 24-hour period. I invited him to my house and got to know him for that 24-hour period and invited him back. And we've been sharing some good conversations at evenings after his days on campus. So looking forward to hearing Dan's comments today and then hearing some of the things that you're going to bring to the table as well. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, thank you everyone for coming out on this not exactly pleasant weather evening. I definitely really appreciate it because it's I know it's not always fun with that kind of weather. I'm going to get this ready to roll with what I need in just a moment. Okay. So, talking about our topic for this evening, which is photos, taking and sharing photos that evoke, inspire, and give you pause. So, what we're really talking about is being mindful about our visual communication, okay? So we talk about mindfulness a lot, and I know here at Hiram that's something that is big on your radar. We talk about mindfulness in the use of technology, mindfulness in your fields of study, in your education, in your interactions with each other. So when it comes to the general term of mindfulness, what do we mean? Can somebody give me like a one-sentence description on what this topic, what the word means to you? Maybe it means something a little different to me.
To me, it means sort of being aware and not just going through the motions of something, to sort of take a step back and look at it and how it applies to other things.
Yeah, okay, that's a good definition. And not going through the motions. The term I've heard used and I think really works well is going on autopilot. We spend so much of our lives on autopilot. We respond to things based on kind of something we really didn't give much thought to. And so we find we're doing things without intent, without purpose. We're not really present in the moment. We're not really present to our own experience. And we have a lot around us that sort of makes that easy to do with the way that our world has kind of evolved and progressed. But we also kind of have it in our nature. By the way we evolved to kind of be able to make quick decisions without spending a lot of time thinking about them, because that helped us when we were fleeing predators on the savannah. If you spend a lot of time thinking about what experience you're having as the tiger is chasing you and what this means to you and the implications of it, you're probably going to be lunch. So in that case, it was really helpful for us to be able to evolve some shortcuts, some mental shortcuts that got us to a decision quickly without spending much time thinking about it and kind of pondering the implications of it. We'd get out of there. But things have changed. We're not fleeing predators on the savannah anymore. We're facing a world that is very complicated in numerous levels. I know I've been working with some of you in Sarah Mabey's climate change class, and you guys have been kind of getting an idea of how complex these systems are and the systems they relate to and how they affect people's political views, their social situations. It's incredibly complicated. And so it's imperative that we learn to practice mindfulness in what we do. So I think it really fits in with something like like photography that you might think of as more of an artistic thing. It doesn't relate to maybe directly to some of the bigger challenges we face, but the practice is the same, of that being mindful about our approach to things and how we interact with the world. And so in the context of mindful photography and trying to get pictures that visually communicate well, we're focusing on something that's from an artistic standpoint, but I think it really applies beyond that. So hopefully the things we'll be talking about you can see how they apply outside of just the context of photos that you might take, whether it be as somebody who's very serious about photography, or just somebody who's going through life and you take pictures when you're with your friends, when you're on vacation, when you're hiking, when you're going about your day-to-day life, when you have a lunch that looks really great, and you decide you need to take a shot and share that. So let's talk about kind of how we are experiencing photography as individuals. Like, what would you say is the most common way that you relate to photos or they show up in your life? Would it be social media?
Oh, yeah.
Most people here are like on Instagram, your friends send you snaps, you see pictures on Facebook. Who here has posted a picture to social media in the past week? Just about everybody, okay? So let me ask you this. Why did you take the picture? Anybody want to share why they shared a picture on social media? What was the reason they were sharing it? Maybe some possibilities. Sometimes, Danny, did you know?
It was kind of a collection of picking my favorite photos I had taken all fall while out walking around.
Okay.
So instead of posting them all, just picture a few.
Yeah. So you wanted to share an experience or some of your experiences through your photos. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What are some other reasons that people are sharing photos? Do you know?
I shared a memory. It was a couple years ago. It was of myself and my grandparents. And to me, it was special because my grandpa passed away. So
Okay.
It brought back a memory.
Yeah. So your memories that are powerful to you, you want to share those with people. We do photos of those types, but the fact is we also probably do lots of photos that maybe they're not as significant. I want to be clear, there's nothing wrong with that. If you're having a good time with your friends and you want to take a quick shot to post on Instagram, I'm not here to tell you that that is somehow an ignoble type of photography to do, that you're wasting the technology. There's a place for fun in anything you do, and certainly photography is one of those things. But maybe sometimes we get to where we're losing our appreciation for what photos can do because they've become so perfunctory, because it's so easy now. I mean, it used to be taking a picture was a commitment. It was a resource commitment, it was a time commitment, and it was an education commitment. And that's not the case anymore. And that's fine, but we don't want to, in the process of having the convenience of that technology, lose the value of that tool, okay? And I think that's one of the things that I really want to stress with this talk, and any of the talks I do on photography, is it's really easy to lose the value and the power of that tool because it's so easy. So that's kind of the balance that I would like to suggest there. Enjoy just your fun, frivolous pictures, but realize that when you want to communicate something significant to you, a memory that is special to you, a set of experiences that are special to you or beautiful to you, or whatever else it may be, that maybe that's a time to practice a little more mindfulness. Take a little more time and really think about what the experience is that you're trying to share and how you want to communicate that to your audience. So what is the experience? Well, every time there's a photo taken, there are two experiences that happen. There's the experience of the photographer, and there's the experience of the viewer that views that. And that could go on to numerous experiences if that particular picture is viewed by more than one person. Everyone who looks at that has an experience with that picture, but the first experience was before the picture was taken. So this is where our mindfulness comes in. This is where we can be present with our experience. So have you ever found yourself doing something and got distracted from it by feeling the need to capture it on a photo or a video or something like that? Kind of took you out of what the experience was? I think probably all of us have done that. So how do we avoid that? How do we make our photos complementary to our experiences and sharing them something that's meaningful to us and to other people? Capturing pictures that really impact, that really have a power to move people and inspire, even if it's not anything we're looking to be earth-shattering, just something we'd like to share that we appreciate. We'd like to add that bit of beauty to someone else's life. There are a number of different elements that we can take a look at when it comes to a picture. So let me pull up an example of what I have to reconnect this. Apologize for that. Just a moment. Okay. So to start with, what is going to be important for us is to be present and aware of what experience we're having. That happens before you pull out the camera, or at least bring it up to your eye. Maybe it's hanging on a strap or whatever. The camera's there. But the experience that you're trying to share, whether it be something that you find beautiful, something you find fascinating, something that you find exciting, maybe it's something that's disturbing or concerning and you're trying to capture that. Maybe it's important for something you're doing for your school and you want to, for that educational purpose, you want to get a good quality picture that really says what it is you're trying to capture. The first thing you do is experience it. Experience what you're looking at and the situation that you're having. And that is maybe not as straightforward as it might sound. So if you're looking at an image, and so here's a picture of some wildflowers in the desert in California, and this is a little south of the Sierra. So we have this hillside covered with beautiful wildflowers, lupins, and some other ones that I don't know the names of. And so I was hiking along, and I came around this bend, and just the whole mountainside is just erupted with this gorgeous color, and the sky behind it was perfect, and I was just incredibly moved by what I saw. I felt so lucky to be able to be there at that moment, experiencing what I was experiencing. And so I pull out my camera because I want to capture this, because I want to share it with other people, because I had this beautiful experience and this beautiful moment. But what was I experiencing before I clicked the shutter? Well, I was experiencing a hike, a lot of rigorous physical activity. I was experiencing the altitude that added to that. I was experiencing the excitement and inspiration of this incredible big adventure. And I was also experiencing everything that you see in the picture. I was seeing the sky and the clouds, and I was seeing the flowers, but I was also feeling the wind. I was smelling the flowers. I was hearing the wind rustling. I was hearing the bees buzz around. I was experiencing all of those things, only some of which can I communicate through a visual medium. Okay? And that's an important thing to understand is once you kind of find yourself present in that experience, and you're not going to probably enumerate all those things, but you're going to be aware of them and be aware of how they're affecting you. Man, this thing just goes to sleep fast. Have you ever had an experience that you couldn't capture in a photo? There was just so much going on that a photo didn't do it justice. Have you ever had that type of picture? Doesn't do it justice? I think everybody's had that. Yes.
Beyond that, I've been horrified at being at places where people insist on experiencing what's going on through their device.
Mm-hmm.
So they could be at a concert, and rather than viewing the concert, wide angle or focusing on a particular place, they want to capture what's going on, and they're looking at it through the device. And instead of broadening their experience, they're limiting it so greatly. I mean, we talk a lot here about the dangers of the ways in which mobile devices can distract people. And I think that that's an example of distraction.
Yeah.
You're thinking of posting it.
Sure.
Or viewing it in the future. Look, everybody, look where I am. They're not experiencing it.
Yeah, if we ask that person in that situation, why are they taking that picture or shooting that video like we asked here, what do you think the answer might be? Why are you doing this? If they're being honest with themselves, what would they say? Maybe because I want my friends to be jealous? Because I'm at this concert or whatever it is. I'm here doing this thing. So their thoughts are anything but present. And I understand what you're saying. Yeah, it's become kind of, I don't want to say a problem, but maybe it is a problem, where we're experiencing the world through this piece of technology instead of using it to complement our experience. It's now controlling our experience. I was talking with some friends who were just traveling, and they met with a bunch of other people on the trip, and they're trying to figure out where they're going to go to eat. And someone's suggestion actually was, I want to go to this restaurant because it will play well on my Instagram feed. That was literally what they said, how they decided what restaurant they wanted to go to. So that seems like a shame to me, that you're that disconnected from your own experience. Because our experiences are what shape us, right? They're what determine what impacts us in life, what excites us, what inspires us, and how we're able to meaningfully impact and interact with other people. It's those experiences. It's not how well they show up in a tiny screen like this where your friends can see your story and see what you've done. And again, I want to mention this, I'm not saying there's no place for that, but there's no place for only doing that, for having that be the primary way that you're looking at the world around you, is what will look cool in this social media thing that probably isn't going to have a powerful impact on your life or anybody else's. So what we need to do with the technology part of it is find that balance, right? Of where we're using it. It's a tool that complements and augments our experience. And that's why I think the first thing to do is start by being really present and aware of what your experience is. If I, on a long hike, just was constantly looking through the lens of the camera, I would never get the hike done. And so the goal of the adventure itself kind of dictates a little bit of that for me. But there's been times when, yeah, I get a little too caught up in trying to catch the picture, and I'm not fully present in the experience. And so, but mindfulness is not a toggle switch, it's a practice. And we all practice it in different ways. But we start by being present and aware of our own experience. So we can look at what I was experiencing there, and we can look at the elements of that picture. Because in this case, there are certain elements of the experience that I can capture on film. I couldn't capture all of it, but I could capture some of it. Enough of it, I think, to have an attractive picture that allows a viewer to kind of get a sense of what that view would look like. You're hiking through some steep, rugged country, and you see this mountainside covered with wildflowers. So there was a portion of it that I was able to capture, but there was a portion of it that I wasn't. And I think that's kind of part of being aware of what your experience is, aware and mindful and present, is if I'm going to take this picture, I'm wanting to share the part of this experience that I can communicate. That's my goal. Recognizing that I can't share the whole thing. There's no way I can put in a picture what it feels like to hike up to the top of that mountain. But if a person has ever hiked a mountain before and they see the country that the picture is in, this terrain, they might get a little sense of that. And that gets into another area that I want to talk about that is an important part of the experience of the photographer before he takes the picture. And that is actually, let me just illustrate it with a picture first of all. Let's talk about that. If I go to this picture over here, I want to show you a picture, and I want you to take a minute to look at it, or a few seconds to look at it, and be able to come up with a value judgment or a qualitative judgment on what your experience is, what kind of experience you have with this picture. Anybody see that clearly? I get in a moment there. Take a couple seconds, look at this picture. Okay. Did anybody here have an experience that maybe was less than awesome, less than positive from that picture? You guys, yeah. Would anybody describe their experience as positive? You would, okay. Were you looking at different pictures? I'm pretty sure you're looking at the same picture. So you're seeing green grass here, and you're seeing green grass here, and you're seeing this snake, and you're seeing this snake, and you're seeing its tongue, and you're seeing its tongue, and you're seeing the gravel. You're both seeing all the same visual elements. Neither of you were there, but you had a different experience. Why is your experience different? What is it about that picture that makes it, and there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. I was hoping somebody would say they have a less than positive experience with that.
I'm just terrified of snakes.
You're terrified of snakes.
Yeah.
Did you feel that way before you were attacked by a snake?
I've never been attacked by a snake.
Okay. I thought you had. What you have that's different is you have different stories about a snake. You have a different narrative that affects your experience when you look at the picture. When I'm taking a picture of something, a big part of my experience, possibly the most weighty and significant thing that's happening to me, is the narratives that I have about what's going on. So if I went back to the other picture and showed you a picture of that mountain, and I climbed that mountain and got pictures of the wildflowers, a big part of my experience is the narrative I have around things like wildflowers, the narrative I have around the effort of climbing a mountain. Do I think that is a ridiculous waste of time, or do I think it's rewarding? That's a story. That's a narrative. And we have narratives about everything. If you watch a commercial for Chevy trucks or Ford trucks or something like that, what do you see? You see like this guy in jeans, and he's working and he's loading stuff up into the truck, and he's doing all this physical work, and probably the sun setting, indicating that this guy's working to the end of the day, and then his truck helps him get all this stuff hauled away and done or whatever. Why does the advertiser paint that kind of picture? It's because they're appealing to a narrative. The narrative that they believe their target demographic embraces, that of the hardworking everyman who sees a truck as a tool for getting things done and has kind of a personal relationship with this four-wheeled vehicle. You'll see it everywhere in advertisement and in cinema and in everything you do. Narratives are what control your experience. And when I say narratives, I want you to understand I'm not talking about a story that is defined and clean cut. Like once upon a time, I walked up onto a mountain and I saw a snake, and the snake scared me. That's not the kind of narrative I'm talking about. Narratives are how we give meaning to all the events that we experience and see. It's a framework for giving meaning to everything. If we didn't have narratives, then everything would just be a series of events. So when we're talking about taking a picture and capturing our experience, being mindful of what's going on starts with being aware of our own narratives. Our own reasons that we're impacted by this scene. I happen to think rattlesnakes are really cool. I've encountered them, but you have a different narrative around rattlesnakes. And I'm not saying your narrative is wrong, but if I'm trying to communicate that this is a cool creature that I think is amazing, and I'm basing that on my own narrative, that communication is going to land flat with you. And that's just the reality of the fact that we're different and we have different stories and different narratives. But understanding the world through narratives helps us to understand why we don't effectively communicate sometimes. It helps us to also understand why we're impacted the way we are. The other picture that I had shown, or one similar to it, I can show you all kinds of, I just hit the wrong thing, all kinds of things that I have narratives around. So here's a scene, this is Thousand Islands Lake up in the Sierra. And I took this picture because I thought it was a beautiful view, and I was enthralled with the moment and the experience. But lots of that is layers of my own narrative. I was in the middle of this big adventure, and this was the top of a very big, hard, difficult climb, and it's rewarded with this huge view that's a payoff. Lots of my own narrative. But at the same time, I think it's probably safe to say most people would have a fairly positive reaction to this. Why do you think that this isn't as divisive? What is it about this picture that makes it so most people are going to have a positive reaction to this kind of scene? First of all, let me ask, do you think that's a pretty scene? Most everybody thinks that's fairly attractive. Why is it attractive to you? What about frozen water on big rocks in a puddle in front of it with some green photosynthetic organisms in the front? Why is that beautiful? Can you have any ideas on why we find that beautiful? Like we're kind of getting deep in this rabbit
It's
hole.
attractive to me because it's familiar to me. Like that looks like home to me.
Yeah.
It's like a place I call home.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
So you
the
have-
familiarity that makes it like, oh, I know that part of the world.
Mm-hmm. So you have a narrative around that type of scene.
I just think that's interesting because I find it pretty for the exact opposite.
Mhm.
I've never seen something like this. So to me, it's like the infinite possibility of like the open world or
Mhm.
something.
Yeah. I got to figure out how to adjust this sleep time. This thing. Dan, you had a
Same
comment?
thing, something I've never seen before. So it kind of hit off.
Yeah. There are certain scenes like this that are kind of universally appreciated, I think. And why those are, we could go kind of deep into the psychology of it, but there's a story there that's pretty universal. And that's the next thing I want to point out is that if you want your photos to be impactful to a lot of people, then understand the kinds of pictures that speak to a lot of narratives, a lot of people's narratives. And so a lush, rich scene like this is something that most people are going to have a narrative around that's positive. Now that doesn't mean you don't take pictures of the rattlesnake, because she thought it was cool. And maybe if I'd have done it better, I could communicate to you in a way that might have landed better. I don't know. But I intentionally took that picture to kind of be aggressive right in the face of the person. So I wasn't exactly trying to make that easy on people who have a bit of fear of snakes. But understanding how narratives land with people. And this is, I just asked you to do a huge thing. I just asked you to do a gigantic thing. And that is I asked you to understand how other people experience the world. That's huge. But I think it's pretty critical. I think it's incredibly critical if you want to communicate visually effectively to understand the narratives that other people are experiencing to at least some extent. And it's a practice. But it goes way beyond that. If I want to communicate visually, I need to understand what communication lands well with people and their narratives. If I want to communicate in writing, I need to understand that same thing. If I want to communicate by speaking, if I want to communicate a message that I believe is very important, I need to understand that. I don't think there's any limit to where this applies, personally. I mean, we started talking about photography and how we communicate, but understanding the stories of the people that you're trying to communicate to, I think is possibly one of the most powerful tools that you can ever put into your arsenal, no matter what it is that you're trying to work with, whether it be an art of some sort, or whether it be a science that you're trying to help people understand, whether it's a political perspective, whatever it is. I don't think there's too many, I can't think of any communication tool that's more powerful than understanding how your audience is experiencing the world. And so we have some types of experiences that are pretty universal, that a broad range of people would appreciate. So a scene like this, most people are going to find appealing. And it doesn't have to be something like this. It could be something, it could be another scene like this, someone having a moment of quiet reflection. This is something that we can all appreciate how that would affect us. I don't have any pictures to demonstrate this, but things that speak to common experiences and stories, like if you ever see a picture of like an older person holding a baby, we kind of have a cultural story around the significance of that. We see the connection across generations, and we see how warm and inviting that type of relationship is. We think of traditions being passed down. We think of the love we have in our families, and the idea of passing on things of value to other generations that come behind us. Those are some things that are so culturally part of our story, and probably beyond culture, even just into us as human beings, that we can expect that most people are going to have a positive reaction to that. But there are some things that won't get a positive reaction from everybody. And that doesn't mean you don't take pictures of those things or communicate those things. But you understand, you go into it understanding why some people are going to respond to this and some aren't. And maybe you can find a way to communicate, whether it be a photo or something you're writing or some other type of art or a speech. Maybe you can find a way to communicate that concept that doesn't clash with someone's narrative. And that's a topic that's much bigger than what I can go into today. But it's the kind of thing that I think you need to start thinking about if you want to capture pictures that are going to be impactful, that are going to inspire, that are going to motivate, that are going to make people think. And again, I think it goes beyond just photo taking. So when I am taking pictures, I have different things that I wanted to communicate that are part of my story. And I'm trying to find ways to communicate them to other people. So memories for Janelle were something, at least in that one picture, that is something that's important to her to communicate. That's something that can work well with a lot of people. They respond to that. They understand the concept of valuing the memories of our relationships and honoring them. Common experiences that most people may enjoy or something that lands well with people. Some of the things that I like to share have to do with my appreciation for nature. I'm a huge nature buff, so I want to communicate that in a way that expresses the kinds of things that I'm experiencing. So I have to be aware of the experience I'm having, and then I can think about how can I communicate that to other people who have a different set of experiences. So I'm fascinated by little, small, subtle things in nature. Like this opportunity I had to see the structure of a leaf in really fine detail just because of the way it had naturally broke down. And I saw this on the branch that I was walking by and I was like, wow, that is so cool. I can totally see how this leaf is structured. And I don't think I've ever gotten to see that before. And so I'm fascinated by elements of nature that give me those opportunities. The busyness of life with all kinds of different living things doing what they do, different types of plants and organisms, the geology that's going on around them, that they're interacting with. Those are all things that I'm trying to communicate. Sometimes it's just awesome, powerful nature that I'm just, wow. And maybe I'm a little scared because I actually walked in on these two fighting and I was about 15 feet from them when I saw them. So I'm trying to capture those things and then share them. So what are some of your things that you really appreciate that you would like to share? I want to hear from you. What are some things that excite you, whether it be in nature, in your personal life, in your work, in your school, that you might want to express to people? Anybody have anything?
I enjoy finding stuff in nature that's sort of really cool and small, but tucked away from a perspective that you normally wouldn't see it.
Yeah. So I don't know if I had a chance to meet you or if you were at the previous talk, but I said when I'm on the trail, my trail name is Macro, because one of my favorite types of photography is macro photography. So I'm with you. This is why I take macro pictures, is because I can get into things that I don't normally ever get to see. How often do you get to see the structure of frost crystals? I think that's really cool. This is something that's common. We wake up with frost on our windshield and frost on the grass, but you look at it really closely and it's fascinating. It's got this intricate structure that has a scientific basis. Like there's chemical and mathematical reasons why it forms that way, but I don't know those. I know they exist, but I know it's beautiful and I know it's really interesting. And so I look at the way snow melts off of a tree and I try to capture that. I look at these tiny little fungi. These are British soldier lichen, these redheaded ones. And then there's some prickly sassafras. And I look at a scene like that through a macro lens. And I look at it, I'm like, wow, it's like this crazy alien world down there it's like really tiny, but it's so fascinating. And the reason why I can do that is because I've given myself permission to be childish. So if there's one piece of simple advice, so I gave you the tough advice, and that is try to understand how people different from you experience the world. Here's the simple advice: be childish. I don't mean childish as in start a fight over your crayons with your buddy. I mean childish as in be fascinated with the things around you. Be excited about little things. Let yourself be goofy and childish and get down there and look at it. Play with it. See it as something new instead of something you've walked over a million times. I guarantee you've all walked past tiny lichen and moss growing beside a trail, maybe on a stump or something. Did you know it looked like that up close? I don't know about you, but I think that's really cool looking. It's like this jungle of alien looking stuff that's growing on a stump next to a trail in the forest. I mean, there's probably some similar to that in your forests around here. So let yourself be a little childish and be excited about things. And that will allow you to look at things with the perspective of a child, which is that things are new, things are exciting, and I'm not jaded by them. And then you can have the possibility, once you've had that experience yourself, of communicating that with others. What are some other things that people like to people experience, that you experience, that you might like to share with other people? Okay.
I watch a lot of athletic events, and like the things that like our bodies can do is insane.
Yeah, it's really, really impressive to watch a well-trained athlete, especially. I'm not a sports photographer, so that's not something I take pictures of. But I know that I enjoy watching it when it's captured well. Seeing the results of an incredible amount of training and effort to come down to precision movements, and at the same time great amounts of endurance and strength. Yeah. So when you're at an athletic event, if it's live, and if you were going to take a picture of that, that might be a challenge for you, because it could be difficult to be focused on trying to capture those moments and at the same time just enjoying the experience and watching it. And that's not my type of photography, so I don't know exactly what the answer is. If I did, I would tell you. But I think it starts for you with being aware of that, being aware of the challenge of doing those two things. And maybe the answer is that it's not something you necessarily photograph. Maybe it's something you enjoy the experience yourself and with your friends that are there with you. And that's as far as it goes. And that's totally fine. In fact, it's probably better than trying to capture it and not capturing it and also not experiencing it. So awareness of your experience and the mindfulness of what you're valuing about that maybe tells you that this is a thing that's just for me and whoever's with me right now. I'm not saying that's necessarily the case, but that should be on the table. So as a photographer, I will tell you, sometimes put the camera down. Absolutely. I have to do that once in a while. I have to remind myself of that once in a while. It's so important to me to share what I experience with people. I feel incredibly lucky that I get to do the kinds of things that I do. I get to go on these big long hikes and I get to go to these incredibly beautiful places. I'm very driven to share that. But there are some times when I have to go, and I learn to say these exact words. I say, nope, this one's just for me. This one's just for me. Because I have to keep present with those experiences if I'm going to have any hope of sharing those with other people. And if that means that I can't do both, then I have to have my own experience first. So I'm glad you brought that up. That's a really good example. What are some other things that you appreciate, that excite you or move you, that you might want to share with other people? Do you have another example? Yes?
I really like traveling, so I like to take pictures of different cultures and different places and people.
Mm-hmm. Awesome, yeah. what I love about that example is, so now we've gotten an example where his interest in small little things is probably quite easy to capture on film. Hers may be completely impossible. Yours is probably somewhere in the middle. So I think that's really cool that the three of you picked those different things, because travel photography can be a wonderful way to complement our experience. I'm going to be talking later on in another talk about that, about mindfulness when we're trekking, whether it be with trekking poles and hiking boots or traveling to another place. How do we keep that balance and be able to capture images and memories that are going to be moving to us and that share with other people, but at the same time not missing out on really enjoying those cultures and the people there and all the things that come with that. So yeah, I mean, that's a great example of the things we want to share. Do you feel that it's important to you to share some of that with other people in your life, or is it something you just like to experience yourself? And neither answer is wrong, I'm just curious.
A little bit of both.
Uh-huh.
I find that sometimes when I'm traveling, I don't want to take my camera out with me that day, just because I feel like I'm just looking behind the screen and I'm not experiencing what's happening.
Yeah.
So it depends on the day. Yeah.
There's a couple different interesting perspectives on that of how you relate to looking through that screen. There's a musician, I don't think he's done anything for a while, but about 15 years ago, he was pretty big, John Mayer. John Mayer. There's a song called 3x5. And the context of the song is it's a letter he's writing home, and he'd been in the habit of sending pictures back from his travels, and this time there's no pictures because he felt like he was missing out on his experience focusing on taking pictures instead of actually having the experience. And so whoever he's writing this letter to, he's saying, why don't you just come join me on the adventure next time, and instead of me sending you pictures. It's one perspective, and there's certainly value to that. But I don't think any of us want to not take pictures of our travels. So maybe we can find a way to where it's complementary, to where when we are taking pictures, we are getting good shots and also not being distracted from the experience. There's a photojournalist named Dorothea Lange who her career was around the early part of the 20th century, and she had a good career as a photojournalist, and she had a lot of interesting things to say about photography. One of the things she said that I love is my favorite quote about photography is, she said, a camera is an instrument that teaches you how to look at the world without a camera. So by being mindful of how you use the device, then it gives you a little gift that you can take with you when you're not using the device. You can have the moments of just appreciating things that normally you'd be looking for through a camera lens. The way the light hits the things you're looking at, and the way the shadows play on it, the way that the natural surroundings kind of frame it. And you don't even have to have the camera up in front of your face to appreciate those things, because that's, that practice has given you that gift. So I love that quote. So, but they seem kind of contradictory of like the idea of, I'm not sending you pictures, I'm not taking pictures, whereas this camera is what makes me be able to have these great experiences. And I think, again, we're looking for somewhere in the middle. I am a photographer, but I think I would call myself an adventurer first. And that is the order I think I need to keep that in. And so maybe you'll decide to do travel photography, but be a traveler first. And then the photography part complements that. And then when you're looking at your pictures, they're going to mean something to you. And when you're sharing them with others, they're going to mean something to them. Any other things anybody can think of? Okay, I'll show you one or two more of mine, and then we'll wrap this up so I won't take up your whole evening. But just to kind of give you something, I like to try to share powerful experiences I have if I can find a way to capture them. So here was a powerful experience I had that I popped the camera behind me. Oops, I don't. Technology is our friend, right? That's, okay. Okay. I was sitting overlooking Cook Inlet, looking out toward the Kenai Peninsula in Alaska. This is pretty. I'm just going to turn this down just a little bit. Let's see that a little bit better. And it was kind of cool. It was wintry time, but not super cold. And I just had this great experience of looking out there with this starry sky. And that was a really powerful experience for me, of just being out there at night on a mountainside in Alaska, looking out toward this incredible view. And so that was the thing I wanted to share. Something else that I might want to share would be this powerful experience where I woke up on the Appalachian Trail to these trees that were totally covered in hoarfrost, about 1.5 inches long, and I had never seen anything like that before. I think I mentioned in the other talk, this is not a black and white photo. This photo is in full color. There's just simply no color to be found. And it was such an eerie, also kind of beautiful experience. And it was contrasted with how freaking cold it was. So there's that. Here's a powerful experience I had that I like to share. It's a big picture. So this is me in the redwood forest. These trees, they actually have names. The individual trees, I don't mean like the species. Those are called the screaming titans. And it's in this grove of old redwood trees in the Jebediah Smith State Park in northwestern California. And this is a secret grove. If you look up the Grove of the Titans online, you will find all kinds of information about how to get there. It's all wrong, intentionally. It's kept a closely guarded secret. And I found it. And it was actually pretty spiritual for me because I love nature and I love trees. And I got to spend a little time with a magnificent display of trees in their natural environment that I had never had any experience quite like that before, of being out there by myself with these living things that are thousands of years old, bigger than I can comprehend. And the only thing I can do is get this picture that shows how tiny I am compared to this. So that's one of the things I like to share, is some of the powerful experiences I have. I showed you some of the macro pictures I like because I'm so excited about that. I like to capture images of how impressed I am with the power of life, how incredibly resilient and just mighty life is as a force. And so this is in the Great Sand Dunes National Park in Colorado. This is about almost 9,000 feet elevation, and it's this very high desert, and it's very dry. And this flower, this is called the desert sunflower, and it's just kicking ass. And I love that sort of stuff. And so when I see something like that, that's something I want to share. Like, yeah, life wins. So I try to capture that, and I try to capture it as best I can to kind of highlight that. And does it land with people? I don't know. I think sometimes it does, but maybe it doesn't always. This was interesting. This was on the way up to Forester Pass on the Pacific Crest Trail. This is at about 13,000 feet up. Nothing was growing up there. Nothing was alive. It's just barren frozen rock, and there's just one clump of flowers right outside the trail that's doing great. Why I decided to live up there, you're going to have to ask the flower, but I'm very impressed. You can see looking back, it's just frozen nothing, except this bunch of flowers. So that's something that excites me. that I like to share with people is the power of life or the amazingness of it. You ever heard of a cicada? These are cool.
They're so annoying to use. Right?
Yeah, but they're awesome. That lives in the ground for 17 years before it comes out and has its brief adult life. 17 years. I think that's really cool. I'm not sure why they need that long of a stage. And then just in general, just my love, my absolute deep, profound love for nature and living things. It's something I love to share. And so I will, when I'm out there, I try to have that experience, be profoundly, deeply in love, and then maybe I can catch a picture. Thank you very much for your time tonight. I really appreciate it. For the students here, I just want to mention, keep an eye on your email. There's going to be a contest that you'll be hearing about soon. And I'm not going to give you too much details on that, but it's going to be captioning some pictures. And the prize on that is really cool. So watch your emails for that. I think Wednesday, that's going to get probably, look for around Wednesday. But yeah, I wanted to not forget to mention that. Keep an eye on that and have get yourself involved in that contest, and you could win something very, really cool. Does anyone have any questions for me? Yeah.
It's kind of a technical one, but it's a two-part question. Does your camera have a detachable lens, or is it all of the different setup?
Yeah, I have a couple different cameras that I work with. So yeah, it's a detachable lens. When I'm on a long distance hiking trip, like this was from the PCT, I pare myself down to one lens. I only take one lens with me. So I try to take something with quite a range. So I have, like on the Pacific Crest Trail, I took a 16 to 300 millimeter lens. And that worked pretty good. It wasn't a super fancy lens, but I could, weight and cost and everything are such a big deal when you're doing that sort of hike that I can't bring a full complement. If I'm just doing a day hike, I probably have at least, three lenses in my pack at any given time if I'm just out for the afternoon, because it's not as big a deal. But yeah, on the big long hikes, I gotta be choosy. Good question?
So you were talking about the importance of narrative, both in your own narrative, the story that you're telling, the story that your audience is hearing. But there was another piece of it, I think, when you're a photographer, and that's the art. And in terms of my response to the snake picture, I'm not fond of snakes, but that
I should have asked you.
Amazing. Because, and I was wondering, how many shots did you have to take to get a picture of that snake with its tongue out? Did you put yourself at risk? Was it here in your shutter? How, what was your shutter speed? How did you do that? Did you happen to have the right lens on the camera? And your depth of field was perfect because, and so all of that is part of it too. Somebody else could have gotten a picture and you couldn't even have told what was a tongue and what was, a blade of grass. But you've got really good equipment. You've got a great eye. Your composition was superb. Your settings were perfect. And so part of it is just an appreciation of, yes, you're telling me a story, but I'm also admiring your art and appreciating your art.
I love the fact that I assumed what your story was and I got it wrong. I think that's such a good example. I think that's a great example of what I was talking about. And I'm so glad you said that, because we think we know what other people's stories are, don't we? But they're not always what we guess. It's an art, it's a practice. Quick answer to a couple of those questions. The danger actually had already passed. So I was walking along the Pacific Crest Trail, and I'll try to get back here far enough so I can show you. And it was a rare shady spot in a very open, hot, dry part of the desert. And so as soon as I get to the shady spot, of course I can't really see because my eyes haven't adjusted to the darker area. And my right foot lands, and the left foot is right here, and I hear right under my left foot. And if you've never heard a rattlesnake